So you already answered a couple of my questions, and just for the sake of time, I would like to know, what's an artist, if you could choose any artist to have dinner with, what artist would you like to have dinner with, and why?
Well, I would have dinner with Joan Mitchell. And Joan Mitchell is a painter who was one of the so-called second generation abstract expressionists, but her capacity to describe energy and force within the landscape as an abstract painter has been a core inspiration for me. And she was a difficult person. She had many challenges as a woman trying to be recognized as an artist in the 1950s and 60s. And she was born in Chicago, lived in New York, was part of a whole group of other artists who were coming up at that time. But then she went to France, and she ended up working for the rest of her life, for most of her working life, near where Monet lived. And she always looked at rivers and bodies of water and gardens and trees as references for her paintings. But she was a very experimental artist whose work, I think, influenced many others of her generation. So I would love to have dinner with her, and I would try to speak in French.
I would love to be at that dinner too, with you guys talking to each other, and to hear you try to speak in French. That'd be really nice too. Okay, so if there's anything that these listeners can take away from this, what is that? When they think of Rebecca Allan, what do you want them to understand about you? What do you want them to think about you? What do you want them to tell about you?
I would just want to share that that this practice of working as an artist is different every day, and that in order to support my work, I've done many different kinds of things, and that is in part why it's important to stay connected with the world. I mean, you are both in my studio, and you can see that it's more or less a solitary working day. But that doesn't mean that I'm not in connection with the world every day. And that's a very important aspect of my work, my collaborative work with the Crossroads team, with my physicist friend and my string quartet, the Fry Street, and the composer, Laura Kaminsky. It's how we move the work from right here on the walls out into the world and let it have its own voice.
I love that. I love that a lot. So anybody listening, look into the Crossroads Project, crossroadsproject.org. I believe it's an amazing collaboration between science and art that really, the message really is profound, and it stays with you. So we've reached the part of the show where me and Fancy Dave will give our final thoughts.
But, actually, I think we have time for a few more questions.
Oh, sure. Do you have any questions?
Let's see. Oh, it's more about your actual painting technique.
Sure.
How much do you depend on being intuitive when you put down that brush on the canvas? How important is that to you?
I think that's a great question. Let me just describe the process from sort of the craft to the intuition. Mm-hmm. Here you can see that I'm stretching canvases this weekend, so there's a lot of raw canvas on the table, mm-hmm. and stretcher bars, and all of the tools that I'm going to be needing, my gesso and all of the materials. So I really like to make my own canvases because there's a lot of satisfaction in the craft of making something well. And then I have to think about the next generations of people who are going to take care of these paintings and live with these paintings. I don't want them to fall apart. So there's a lot of integrity in the painter's craft. Then in my sketchbooks, you'll see a lot of drawings that reference photographs and actual landscapes that I visited, either here in the Northeast or in New Mexico or Norway. The lines in those sketchbooks are really guidelines in my head for how I might start on these larger canvases. I mean, these are big spaces.
They're very big spaces.
So they may start on the wall,
Yeah.
they may start on the floor with the mixing of the base colors and use of the brush to indicate some shapes that will reference the lines of the rocks, let's say, or the waterfalls, or the ground. But those initial lines are usually buried under the next layers of pools of color that are then applied either with a brush or with a rag or with my hand, so that color is applied quite intuitively. But I'm thinking in the back of my mind about a temperature or an atmosphere. So oftentimes I'll come at that early part of the intuitive process thinking about a color temperature or a color atmosphere. Okay, I have been looking at Velázquez, Las Meninas.
Yes, definitely.
You know that palette, it's so amber and purple and dark brown, and there are the reflections. I want to create an atmosphere like that of Las Meninas. So what are the base colors that I need to mix? Then there's the mixing, which is a subtle process of seeing and adding color bit by bit on my palette and watching.
If I could just interject, like,
yeah,
like this is a good flow. But no, just for the audience, like, just like, I know most people get confused, like the average person who might not know too much about art. But I asked them a question mainly just so they could have an understanding of how much work goes even to abstract art, like just how much of a method an artist might have to might have to develop through the years, just to have their technique down.
True, very true. The method is important to just appreciate, and I think it's important for artists to be able to talk about that, to help others see and understand. Why keep it so hermetic?
Yeah, that's true. It's like I kind of see it as what's the word? It's like a trade secret sort of thing.
Yeah.
So, share the process. Let people know how you make these works, how long, how much dedication you put into them. Because when you talk to an average art appreciator, the first thing they think of when they see a painting is how long did that take?
Yeah.
Because that's all they know to ask.
Right.
Or someone else who might not appreciate it as much might say something like, "My kid could have made that."
Yeah,
right.
I could have made that myself.
That's probably the average, the average response. Usually.
Yeah.
I could have made that myself. Yeah, I really like that you're open with your process and whatnot.
I think it's important, and even if I teach somebody how to do something, they're going to have to find out how to do it themselves. So that's the beauty of working with these active materials. I mean, paint is wet and sticky and it moves around, and it's going to do something different for you, Fancy Dave, than it does for me.
It's true.
As you work with it.
It's true.
It's true.
So,
Any more questions for Rebecca?
Do you?
I just want to reiterate that it is awesome being here in front of these works. Thank you for this opportunity.
my pleasure.
By the way, so if I could do final thoughts, my final thought is, I really like the space that you work in. This space here, like I said, overlooking a river with natural light coming in, but you have your own lights too. I love that you work on the floor. I love that you work on the wall. I hope maybe you work on the ceiling too.
I'll have to try
I love it. Yeah. But if there's anything that I want to focus on this conversation, people take away is the building blocks, the foundations, the what came before. They say, I think Isaac Newton said, if I've discovered anything, and I'm paraphrasing, if I've discovered anything, it's because I've stood on the shoulder of giants. And that's essentially when you were teaching me, that's what I got from you. Remember where you came from so you know where to go. Remember what you're studying so that you know what comes next.
Oh my gosh, that's so profound. I agree with that totally.
Yeah, so I love that this is the next step in the abstract expressionist story. And this is not the end of it, but this is the next chapter. So that's what I want people to take away from this. Dave, anything?
You know me, Mike. I like it.
You like it. So, Rebecca, thank you so
Good.
much for having us here in your studio to do this episode. And where can people find you? Do you have a website? Do you have anything that you want to plug?
Sure, RebeccaAllan.com, my last name Allan. And sometime later this spring, I'll be having an exhibition at the New York campus of Lebanese American University that is looking at my trip to Lebanon last winter through painting.
I remember, that's awesome. That's good to know.
Thank you so much.
Thank
This
you,
was
guys.
such a pleasure.
Thank you. And guys, if you haven't or liked us here on YouTube, please like us. Click that subscribe button. We are on Twitter.
We are on Twitter at art_bros.
And we're on Facebook at Art Bros. So just search Art Bros and you can find us. And hopefully we'll be hearing from you again, Rebecca, soon on the Art Bros. So thank you,
It was
guys.
fun. Thank you.
All right, guys. We'll see you next time.
All right.
Goodbye.